Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Royal Nerd Gaming. I am your host, the Royal Nerd, and before we get back to ranking every variant in Marvel Snap, let's talk about how I messed up. In last week's video, I reviewed all the variants for Spider-Ham, except I actually didn't. As Eagle-Eyed Viewer Not Sure 7813 pointed out, the David Nakayama variant for Spider-Ham was present on the tier list, but I never actually spoke about it in the video. That is because I did record myself reviewing that variant and placing it on the tier list, I just didn't include it in the video. Not sure how I managed that. So, before we start off with the new tier list, allow me to present to you this lost footage from last week's video. This is, I'm gonna say, the only acceptable variant where I can see Spider-Ham's teeth, and it's because it's being used to accentuate the cartoony nature of the variant, so I will allow it. I mean, this is a hilarious variant. It's literally the classic eyes popping out of his head in surprise. It doesn't get much more cartoony than that. The colors are nice and bright, and the whole pose really adds to it, grasping the side of his face in shock as his legs fly back like he's not even on the ground. And the nice light blue outline around him helps him stand out really nicely. I will say, the background is kind of plain. It's just sort of like a yellow surprise. What is yellow surprise? What am I saying? Just sort of yellow shock lines radiating from him. It works, but I wish there was a little bit more to it. It's not quite an S tier for me, but it's definitely a high A tier. And there we go. Now I've actually ranked every variant there is for Spider-Ham. And big thank you to Not Sure 7813. The series is called Ranking Every Variant. I should probably rank every variant, you know? But now, without further ado, let's get to today's tier list, starting off with this week's new card, Red Guardian. Red Guardian is kind of Russia's take on Captain America. You know, a very patriotic superhero wearing the colors of the flag. But that's really all I know about him, and this base card doesn't exactly do a lot to help me out. I mean, it's a nice enough looking card, well colored, the reds and whites of his outfit are nice and vibrant, and the darker blue parts are more shadowed, which gives me a general idea of his vibe. Also, it's contrasted really nicely against the light blue, icy looking background, which makes everything feel very cold and Russian, very fitting. But in terms of what's actually going on in the card, not much. He's just sort of crouched down in this battle-ready position, like maybe he just hopped up on the bridge and is ready for a fight, or maybe he's already in combat and is being pushed back towards the edge. It's not the most dynamic position. It's a little bit interesting. It gives me something to look at and gives me the idea that he's very combat capable, but it feels like there could be more. Then again, I try not to expect too much out of the base cards. If it shows me the character and gives me a general idea about them, then it gets a B tier. Now here we have Red Guardian's Luchador variant, and wow, this pose is certainly something. Is this the pose that I'm gonna... Yeah, this is the one. Give me a minute. There it is. I got it. That's good enough. I'm holding it. I'm on one foot. Okay. Gotta keep it long enough so I can edit it out for the thumbnail. Oh, hardest part of my job. It really is a ridiculous pose, but I kinda love it. The sort of flying knee kick as he jumps from the top rope. But unfortunately, it might be the only part of the variant that I really like. The background is kinda plain. It does a decent job of creating that sort of wrestling ring feel with cameras flashing and light shining down on them, but at the end of the day, it's just a few colored dots and flare effects. My other problem is, I'm not a huge fan of how his outfit looks here. In the base card, the blue was dark and shadowed and contrasted the bright red nicely, but here the colors don't feel like they mesh together as well. Also, we've lost the stark white color of his star in his fin. They feel almost more gray, and without the gloves or the stars on his shoulder, it just feels like the white is being lost to it, whereas the white really stood out in the base card. I know these may feel like small nitpicks, and they are, but at the end of the day, how a character looks is the core of whether you like a variant or not. I don't necessarily like how he looks here better than the base card, so I probably wouldn't pick this one over the base card. So I'm not gonna rank this one over the base card. I've said base card too many times, and it is no longer a word, multiple words. It's not words, it's gibberish in my mouth. I'm gonna give it a D tier. There it is. That's also not D tier, that's C tier. I'm a goddamn mess. As with every card this season, Victor Faro has a variant for Red Guardian, and this is the one that's going to be available in the Spotlight cache. But is it worth it? Well, I don't know. He's done that fiery effect that he's so good at, and in this case, Red Guardian is like bathing in fire or lava. It's like pouring over him. The white of his belt and his gloves, and the star especially, stands out beautifully. But I couldn't really tell you what color the rest of his outfit was supposed to be. And it's clearly a stylistic choice. I don't think it's inherently bad. I do think that it takes away from Red Guardian a little bit. I like the colors of his outfit, and I wish I could see more of them. And in Victor Faro's other variants, the colors of the characters still stood out really nicely against the fiery background. But I think he was trying something a little different here, and I don't know if I like it quite as much as his other ones. Don't get me wrong, Victor Faro's variant is the best of the Red Guardian variants, but I'm only going to give it an A tier, so I probably wouldn't spend the spotlight caches on it. I think that makes Red Guardian our first new card this season to not have a variant that I would consider S tier. So just like US Agent, I'm gonna have to wait and see what new variants come out for them in the upcoming months. To be clear, US Agent did have an S tier variant, I just didn't get it. Or US Agent for that matter, because he seems like a really bad card right now. I'm hoping he gets buffed. But now, let us return to our regularly scheduled cost order with our next card, America Chavez. It feels really weird to be talking about America Chavez already. She still feels like a 6 cost in my brain, but here she is. Now, Chavez's base card here is great. I really like it. The glowing star in the background that is so synonymous with her. Every time you play her, you see a big flashing star, and there it is, right there on the base card. It contrasts the rest of her outfit so nicely. And her name is literally America, so of course it's gonna be red, white, and blue, but it's not your classic superhero outfit. It's really just a hoodie, a jacket, a t-shirt, and some shorts. And yet, it's still so recognizable, and she still feels so super. I think that's something the base card does really well, making her feel super. So, because she's so super, I'm gonna give her an A tier. Kinda felt like I was setting her up for an S tier there. I guess I could've given her an A for America. I don't know. It's good. It's a good base card, alright? Our first pixel of the day. And I'm gonna be honest, I really like it. Chavez seems like a bright, fun character, and that's exactly the vibe I'm getting from her here. I can see a lot of her, I can totally understand her pose, kinda jumping and celebrating. It's cute and it's fun. I was a little confused about how high up in the air she is, like those are the tops of buildings that she is at the same height as, but I looked it up and I think she can actually fly, so this makes sense. Something that they've done really nicely here is the overall contrast of her and her outfit. Every piece of clothing feels visually distinct. Her bright blue shirt stands out against the red and white of her jacket. I also like that you can see her happy smile. I do wish that we could tell where her eyes are. I think they're supposed to be closed because she's like jumping excited. I wish there was some sort of indicator for that, but it's a very minor thing. Overall, this is a really fun pixel variant. I don't like it quite as much as the base card, but it's definitely a very high B tier. At first glance, I thought this variant for Chavez was pretty fun, a little generic, but does the job. But the more I look at it, the less I like it actually. And I think what happened here is they were going for this sort of backlit effect, with these bright streaky lines behind her, and her being a little bit more shadowed in front. But I can't really tell that that's what they were going for, and overall, the whole thing feels more washed out. Specifically, her skin tone and the color of her hair feel off. Plus, Chavez doesn't really feel like the kind of character who should be shadowed in front. She feels bright and bubbly and fun, but this variant isn't giving me bright or bubbly or fun. It doesn't feel like it matches her aesthetic. The base card managed to make Chavez look a little bit more angry and ready for a fight, while still keeping her bright colors and overall feeling very fun. I don't feel like this variant accomplished that, so I'm gonna give it a C tier. And here we have Chavez's baby variant. And any regular viewers will know, I'm not the biggest fan of the baby variants, but that being said, this is one of my favorite baby variants in the game. I love it. I mean, the colors are so bright and vibrant, maybe the brightest we've seen, and that is exactly what I want out of a baby variant. Bright and fun and dripping with personality. Literally dripping. There's like paint lines running down the wall behind her, and that tells us even more about her. The spray paint can, you know, she's a bit mischievous, a little bit of a rebel. Just look at that smirk. She's definitely up to something. And now she's got these cute little star clips in her hair. I mean, that's a new detail, designed specifically for this variant. We don't see that anywhere else, and yet it feels so right. Her big, messy pigtails feel very in character and match the aesthetic of this variant very well, that sort of messy, rebellious vibe. But my favorite thing about this variant, hands down, has got to be the background. Since she's sitting down, they've used where the red and the blue meet to kind of mark the corner of the room, like where the wall meets the floor. Is this visual helping at all? Anyway, with the red wall behind her and the blue floor beneath her, what has Chavez chosen to do? She's adding a white stripe right behind her. And that's not just because those are the American colors, but I bet she's added more white stripes just outside the boundaries of the card, because she's literally turning it into an American flag. If you turn it to the side and the floor is the blue section with the white stars, you'll have the red and white stripes along the wall behind her. It is such a clever way to design an environment that works with her pose and also is so thematically appropriate. I don't know when we're gonna get another baby variant like Chavez's, but anyways, hers is an S tier. Wow, one great Chavez variant after another. This one is beautiful. And talk about a variant that'll probably look awesome when you split it. I mean, one of the first steps in upgrading any card is making it a little bit 3D and allowing it to break out of the frame. Literally, there's a voice that's like, frame break. Well, she's ahead of the game. She is already breaking out of that frame. Now, the colors here aren't quite as vibrant as some of the other variants. Just look at the baby variant. But that's because we're going for a more natural look here. And the colors do feel natural, while still being very bright and fun. I love the way her hair looks here, just kind of flowing off her head and flying out around her, filling up the whole upper quarter of the card. And despite how she's in the middle of attacking, she still manages to feel very casual, really nonchalant about just socking someone in the jaw. I mean, throwing a punch is a very angry motion, a very aggressive thing to do, but she seems really chill about it. This is just another great Chavez variant, so it's also gonna get an S tier. Hey, a Rian Gonzalez variant that isn't a chibi variant. I love it. It's very similar, actually, it is incredibly similar to the other variant we saw with Chavez, you know, punching her fist into her hand, ready for a fight, except this one feels way more Chavez. The colors are bright and beautiful, and they would be. This is Rian Gonzalez we're talking about, but those red, white, and blues are just so satisfying to look at. And I really like that the road that she's walking on seems to be paved with red and white as well. I really like the detail of the stars forming around her fists. As we know, it's even pretty when she punches you. And it is pretty. Chavez looks so beautiful in Rian Gonzalez's art style. I especially love the contrast of her dark, beautiful hair flowing out behind her. I do have one thing that bugs me just a little bit about this variant, and it's that Chavez's head feels just a little too small for her body. And maybe that's just because of how big her hair is and the bulky jacket she's wearing, but it feels like everything else is so big and bright, and then her face is just a little bit too teensy. I've never actually noticed that there's also stars floating around the cost and the power. That's really fun. I love when the variants interact with the frame of the card around them. I love this variant. It is so pretty, and it's got great little details like those stars floating around. But it doesn't feel quite as unique as the variants we've got in S tier. I mean, it's literally a pose we've seen her in another variant, so I'm gonna give it an A tier. But like, a high A tier. If you guys watched last week's video, you might remember when I said that Spider-Ham's Venomized variant was a really generic example of a Venomized variant, and that's why I didn't like it too much. But some people in the comments were quick to point out some fun details about it, like how the glass shattering effect looks really cool once you've split it, plus he has tusks to turn him into a bit more of a boar than a pig. It's still not my favorite variant, but I can totally see how some of those details that I might have overlooked make the variant less generic than I initially thought it to be. This variant, on the other hand, is a very generic Venomized variant. I mean, did we really have to Venomize her entire outfit? I've seen plenty of Venomized variants where they keep some of the original colors so that it creates a nice contrast. Instead, her t-shirt and shorts match the color of her skin here, which just feels weird. And yeah, her jacket might not be like Venom black, but it's not a nice enough color to stand out against the rest of her, and the bright colors that are present are barely visible. It just doesn't even feel like Chavez anymore. And in terms of portraying a Venomized character, it's not that creative. Head to toe, it feels very samey. This is truly just changing her whole outfit black and throwing some teeth on there. I know that some of the Venomized variants can be cool, but this just isn't one of them. So I'm gonna give it a D tier. Now, this variant is taking a very different approach to Chavez's outfit, and I don't think I like it as much. It doesn't look bad or anything, it's just not my preferred outfit for America Chavez, I think. But the colors here are still nice and bright, and you've got those elements that make Chavez identifiable. Although I will say, the red of the stripes and the stars on her pants feels a little bit more pinky here, and usually that would just be a fun little saturated color choice. But for Chavez, I feel like you really want to nail that red coloring, so the American flag design across her shirt doesn't work quite as well for me. But that same sort of pinky color in the background works beautifully. The sky is this gorgeous purplish reddish color, and I love how the sun and it shining is lining up with right where she's readying her fist for a big old punch. One thing that does bother me about this is the way her shirt is kind of billowing in the wind. On the right side, or her left, our right, the shirt is kind of puffed out, and it makes it look like she just got this big old lump on the side of her body. I think it was just trying to display that, there's wind as she flies forward, but because it is a still image, it just looks a little funky. The colors are definitely the highlight of this variant, although even then, they don't all feel like they fit quite right, so overall, I think this one's gonna get a B tier. Hey, our first Dan Hip of the day, and it's a good one. I really like this. This is exactly what Chavez looks like in my mind, so he's nailed that like he often does. Her outfit looks really nice in his style, the red and white of her hoodie and the darker t-shirt with the star on it, plus the blue shorts. It all just flows together really, really well. Plus, you've got the bright star in the background, feeling like it's illuminating the whole card as she flies out of it, ready to punch you in the face. Another variant where she's flying out of the card, ready to sock you one in the mouth. Although, that is one thing that stands out to me about this variant, is that her pose feels a little weird. It feels like the upper half of her body is turning to the side, pulling back for her punch, but her legs are facing forward. I think it works, like she's just twisting but not actually moving her waist. Taking it all in at once, it feels like her body is facing two different directions. I don't know how to explain it. Other than that though, just a really nice variant, so it's gonna get an A tier. And that's it for Chavez. I think her overall color scheme just allows the artist to use some really bright and fun colors that we don't always get to see, so they just stand out really, really nice. But now, on to our next card in the list, Howard the Duck. And, before anyone asks, yes, the lighting is different. Because yes, it is a different day. Because yes, I am not good at leaving myself enough time to finish filming these videos. Alright, let's get back to it, shall we? So, Howard the Duck. Well, first of all, I love Howard the Duck. I mean, not necessarily as a character. I haven't seen the original movie or anything. As far as I understand, it was bad. But as a concept, old-timey detective who is a duck? Great stuff. That being said, I don't really like his base card here, and there's a few contributing factors to that. Number one, it's kind of boring. And yeah, he's going for that sort of edgy, hard-boiled detective vibe, but it just sucks all the energy out of the card. I really wish there was something in the background, or if he had a little bit more of a dynamic pose. Speaking of the background, why is it so pink? I don't know what this filter is that they've placed over it, but it doesn't match the vibe at all. And it makes Howard feel so out of place, because he doesn't seem to have a hint of pink on him. And the drastic change in his colors makes it feel like he wasn't even part of the original image. Like he was just a JPEG that they plopped in after the fact. As for Howard himself, he looks pretty good. I like his detective outfit and his fedora. Feels very classic, but I really wish he had a tie on. I know, that seems like such a weird, small detail to nitpick, but a good-looking suit's important to me. I don't know if you can tell. And when he's got such a nice, formal-looking outfit with the brown jacket and the suit vest, a tie would just really tie it together. Is that why it's called a tie? No, it's called a tie because you tie it, obviously. But like, why isn't he wearing a tie? I feel like he's wearing a tie in every other one of his variants. It just feels like an oversight, and the pop collar just makes this whole area feel empty. Listen, if you're gonna show me a character in a suit, I am going to critique it harshly. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to give the base card here a C tier. Now that is one formal-looking duck. I was wondering how Dan Hip's art style would mesh with Howard. He seemed like the kind of character that would be right up his alley, but his suits are usually a lot darker colors, more grays and browns, so I was wondering how that was gonna mesh with Dan Hip's very bright and colorful art style. And the answer is, very, very well. First of all, he simplified the outfit. He got rid of the jacket and focused in on that tie and vest combo with a dress shirt and rolled up sleeves. That feels very classic detective. And, I mean, obviously, I approve. And then, instead of trying to work with any of the more dull colors that suits can be, he's focused in on this burgundy and maroon color scheme that manages to feel bright, yet still formal. And, I mean, obviously I approve of that too. You really stole my whole fit, huh? And staying with that theme of bright yet formal, the green striped tie provides a nice pop of color and contrasts nicely against the reddish hues of his suit. They are complementary colors after all. Art. The bright blue sky and purple clouds of the background add even more color to an already colorful variant without taking away from Howard at all. He is still the focus and stands out so nicely. I love this variant. This is probably one of my favorite variants in the game, and I don't have it, and that's a tragedy. Anyway, you probably figured it out, but Dan Hip Howard the Duck is a B tier. No, I'm just kidding. It's an S tier. It's obviously an S tier. So clearly, I love the bright and colorful Howard the Duck variant. But if I had to pick one other variant that is just as good, it would be Noir Howard the Duck. You want to talk about classic detective? This is classic detective. The dark brown trench coat and the big hat and the snub-nosed pistol? Oh my god, it's so thematic. This is exactly what I think of when I think of a sort of gritty detective aesthetic. And it's still funny because it's a duck in this gritty dark art style. Hilarious. The whole atmosphere is just so well done. The foggy night, the mysterious black car pulling up behind him. You've even got a little pop of color with his bright red eyes. Ducks have red eyes, right? That's why? That makes sense. And that chocolate brown color of his coat and his hat is just so satisfying. Now I want to steal his fit. Last time he stole my whole thing, now I would like to steal this entire ensemble, please. I think I like Dan Hip Howard just a little bit more than Noir Howard, but this is definitely my favorite of the Noir variants, and that's saying something because I love the Noir variants, so yeah, this one's also gonna get an S tier. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Abducted Howard the Duck. And yeah, I don't really like this one. First of all, the colors are overall just very flat and plain. I feel like at least the tentacles of the monster should stand out a little bit and maybe this bright green, maybe kind of alien feeling, but instead they're very dull looking. The background is nothing really, just sort of a bright light that the tentacle monster fades off into, which feels kind of like a cop-out. I wish we could see more of what's going on back there. And I know it's intended, but the whole thing feels very messy. And just because you wanted it to look messy doesn't mean that it'll look nice being messy. Speaking of messy, Howard's suit has never looked worse. And yeah, I get it, he's a little disheveled right now because he's being attacked by a monster or whatever, but come on! I want him to look cool, that's part of the charm. This ridiculous character, a duck, in a suit, looking great? Here he just looks a mess, and his hat's not on his head, he's not wearing a tie, and I don't know what they've done with his facial features, but he looks kind of dumpy. He doesn't look cool and sleek, and he also doesn't look like washed up like a grizzled detective. He looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, and I don't like that. I don't know, I just feel like this variant does my boy Howard dirty, so I'm gonna have to give it a D tier. For dirty! Hey, look at that. I'm a little bit torn when it comes to this variant. On one hand, he's not wearing his hat or his tie, and yeah, he doesn't have to be for the variant to look good. His suit still looks pretty cool here, but you know I like it when he's got the full formal look. But on the other hand, he's wielding the damn Infinity Gauntlet. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And the effects around the gauntlet look epic. I bet this variant would look so good animated. In general, the whole scene is exactly that. Epic, as Howard wields this gauntlet of immeasurable power as he stands over top an enemy that he seems to have vanquished. I mean, Howard's not usually like a hand-to-hand fighter, I didn't think, but he seems to have pulled it off here. Although, I do wonder, is the Infinity Gauntlet almost too cool here? I mean, it really draws all of your attention, and the focus is lost on Howard. And I get it, this is the Infinity Gauntlet variant, it is the highlight of the card, but I feel like Howard deserves some credit. I mean, he managed to get his hands on the thing, and now he's wielding it. I don't know, as a Howard the Duck variant, I feel a little let down by it, but as an Infinity Gauntlet variant, it feels super cool. So, like I said, I'm torn on it. As a result, I'm gonna give it a score right in the middle, and give it a B tier. Now I know what you're thinking. Howard's not wearing a tie. His suit's incomplete. Oh, he's gonna hate it. And, you're right. I do. I hate it. It is awful. Just trash. Garbage variant. D tier. Instant D tier. F tier, actually. I'm adding an F tier for this variant. I'm kidding. I'm kidding, of course. It's not that bad. I actually kind of like this variant. I actually don't mind that he doesn't have a tie here, and that has a lot to do with the colors of the suit. It feels designed for a more loose style, with the bright pink and the green shirt. Those are less formal colors, so if the style is less formal, that makes sense. I also really like that he's in a rush here. It makes the whole thing feel a lot more lively as he's running down the road, coat flapping in the wind, holding on to his hat so it doesn't blow off his head. The whole thing feels more energetic and fun than the base card, for example, where he was just, stood there. The background kind of looks like a generic gray city street, but it works here, I think, because he is so brightly colored that he stands out extra well against a slightly more dull background. I don't like it quite as much as the Dan Hip or Noir variants, but it's still a super colorful and unique variant, and it absolutely deserves credit for that. So I'm gonna give it, and what button do I press usually? This one. A tier. And I'm kind of blocking it. This would usually be the part of the video where I move down here, but that was the last variant, so guess I'll stay down here to wrap up. So that's gonna be it for today. I would say that this episode felt very patriotic with Red Guardian and America Chavez, but then we had Howard the Duck, who I'm pretty sure is an alien duck from outer space, so kind of threw off the whole theme I had going there, but oh well. If you're wondering why so much of the tier list is still empty, that's because we'll be finishing filling it out next week with our next batch of cards. It's part of the new format where I split up a tier list over 2 weeks and makes everything a lot more manageable for me. So if you don't want to miss out on finishing this tier list, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're notified when the next part of the series comes out. And hopefully I'll see you then. Remember to let me know in the comments what your favorite or least favorite variants of the day were. I always love reading what you guys have to say. So farewell for now, everybody, and have a nice day.